welcome to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast, the podcast where we explore the amazing universe of the Elder Scrolls. Adventurers, welcome back to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast. This is your host, Tom, or Robots, and I'm here punching my microphone. It's hard to, Lotus, I'm here with Lotus. Lotus,
hey, I punched my microphone while we were setting up.
This is the problem with microphones, is that you try to gesticulate a little bit while you're talking, and then you end up just getting in a fist fight with your microphone.
Right, and you get the mic arm angled so that it's at you. This is some deep podcasting lore.
Yeah, these are the first world problems that we have in the world of podcasting. But welcome back, everybody. Glad you guys are here. Sorry we had a little bit of the snafu getting the stream up today. For some reason, Restream's not working, so we're only on Twitch Day. We're not on the YouTube channels. But we're back. We're ready to talk about darkness. Darkness, my old friend. Namira, how do you feel about darkness, Lotus? So,
Namira herself, or itself, whatever you want to refer to Namira as, it's interesting because Namira has a lot of ties to different things in the series, oftentimes whether or not I think a lot of people realize it.
Well, I guess that's the nature of things being in the dark, right?
Exactly.
Is that you don't always see them.
Right. So Namira kind of is involved with a lot of different things, those things also being kind of cool and bringing in the creepy vibe a little bit. But it's funny because when I think of Daedric princes, I never have Namira really up the list of super noticeable or notable ones. And it's almost like that could work as part of Namira's sphere in and of itself. So it's kind of interesting that being obscure also makes Namira more prominent because that's what she's doing. So it's kind of, it's a neat twist of being hidden, but at the same time, that being what she wants to be.
Yeah. Also, if there was a hot topic in Tamriel, there'd be a Namira section.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I guess maybe that's why she's not as noticeable, is that they don't have hot topic. So there is that as well. But yeah, like the very nature of darkness, of being, I mean, she is like, there are some other Daedric princes that are kind of gothy, right? Like,
yeah,
we've got some others, but she is like darkness itself.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Namira, as we'll get into, Namira is really good at, it's kind of funny, in the games themselves, Namira provides you oftentimes a lot more help than you would think, but you have to go looking for it. And the other thing is, actually, Rob the Princess already brought up that we'll get into, like, one of the stories for Namira is so good. So it's really, I don't know. I feel like Namira is almost like the unheralded, like, super noticeable or notable Daedric prince.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, it also ties to Lorcan and Patamaic sides of influence and all of that stuff. So, but here, let's get into it. Of course, Namira is known more than just by one name. So we have the Lady of Decay, the Spirit Daedra, and the Goddess of the Dark. And I'm sure there's been other things that she's been called. But she's typically associated with shadowy things and spirits and slugs and spiders and things that live in the dark and bats and all of that kind of stuff. But for the most part, like you said before, she's kind of, she feels like a lesser player, which is ironic because in some of the lore, so for example, among the Khajiits, she's known as an Daedra, which is another title. Nocturnal has used that title before. Hermaeus Mora is an Daedra, or she's
Correct.
an Dra, or they call Hermaeus Mora an Daedra. That title means that, like, oldest, most powerful, original
progenitor, like, yeah.
Right. So the idea that, like, some of these Daedric princes might be a little bit more primordial than others.
Yeah, it's interesting to think of beings outside of the constraints of time having like an age discrimination between them, which is kind of just weird because it's like, well, this immortal being is older than this immortal being, and it's like, my head, like,
right. But maybe some of them, like this goes back to debates and conversations we've had in the past. Like maybe there are so many slots to hold among the like pantheon of gods. It's like they hold a place, and those slots get filled by different individuals who mantle those slots. So somebody like Hircine might actually be a more recent Daedric prince than somebody like,
which oftentimes Hircine kind of is. Got the note that it seems like Hircine is a little more of one of the newer Daedric princes, for lack of a better word. Whereas, like we were just saying with some of the Daedra, they've been like back. Just making a note to Hermaeus Mora, for example, where it's like that quote that comment on him from. Michael Kirkbride on the forums, where it's like Hermaeus Mora is made of these scraps of the different kalpas. So it's like, well, he's spanning through these kalpas and stuff like that. Whereas, there's the reference with Molag Bal type of thing we had talked about. We didn't really get into the fact that he was around in the time of like because it's very 36 lessons. So it's a little more related to that than Molag Bal himself, the story. But when the Dreg Kings ruled the earth, and it was, relating that to Molag Bal, it's like, so these have been around through Kalpas. Maybe not all of them have. Like, right. That's just it. Maybe some have kind of jumped on and jumped off as it were, or
had been very powerful individuals, or
and have fallen or rose to prominence.
Well, that's what I'm thinking is like in more recent Kalpas, maybe an individual like a Hircine came to power and mantled some position that was there before him, something like that. And maybe Hircine's not the best example of that, but there are, like, Talos, for example, would be a great example of that.
Oh yeah,
Talos wasn't part of assuming that this Kalpa hasn't repeated itself, wasn't a part of a previous Kalpa. Now that we have mirror Kalpas or something.
New Daedric Prince on the block, yeah.
Right, but like that, the idea that like Talos mantled a position and is now held among the gods is kind of a recent thing in this historical age of, like this, these ages of the world, this Kalpa, but who's to say that somebody else didn't do something like that previously?
Exactly.
And that, heck, even the tribunal might have been trying to achieve the same thing. That could be tied into it as well.
Very possible. We don't really know what the long play was with all of that, other than the immediate grasp for power. But then when you look deeper into, some of the workings of Sotha and stuff, it's like, it seems like there's more to this than just gimme.
Yeah. Sotha was trying to understand the whole cogwork of the universe. I mean, that's like, if you can understand that and replicate it and take it apart and put it back together, then maybe you can understand how to, mantle a spot in the infinite, future of everything. But anyway, we're kind of getting off topic here. Let's get back to Namira. Namira is interesting. Of course, there's lots of different cultures and different ways that she shows up in history. The thing that I wanted to point out, and this ties back to some of the events of ESO over the last few years, some of the conversation that we had over the void. Remember the void?
Yes, this is going back a bit to Greymore, and specifically the Reach expansion,
right?
In Elder Scrolls Online.
Yeah, and I think that Namira's connection to all of this is probably the most interesting thing that we could bring up in this episode about her. I mean, we could talk about, similarities, Mephala, and similarity to Nocturnal, and some of those kinds of things. But, I mean, you guys are going to get it. Dark spooky Daedra, kind of similar in those ways. But what makes Namira specifically different is this connection to this like darkness and nothingness, the void, the Patamaic formative influence on the world. And I think the explanation here about the way the Reachmen worship her is probably a really good way to explain how that works. And I'm just going to read from the UESP, our buddies over at the UESP. Go check out their website. This section about the Reachmen is very well put together. So I'm going to quote it for it. So it says here, Namira, who is known as the Spirit Queen, the goddess of death, and the Black Fly, is a revered spirit in the Reachmen pantheon that represents. Why did I say suppresses? Represents.
I was trying to find that in the dialogue. I was like,
oh no,
that's right.
Oh no. Yeah, words is hard. There we go. It doesn't take long, does it? All right. So represents darkness, endings, and rebirth. Let me pause there. We've seen in the real world similarities to this. So the first one that comes to mind is the Hindu gods. Of the Hindu gods, there are gods of life and birth and life and death and rebirth and all of that. Siwa, or Shiva, you usually see it spelled as Shiva, kind of fills that spot for the Hindus. This is very similar. This idea of birth, like rebirth, the ending and death leading to rebirth, and the god that handles kind of the bottom side of that circle, if you would consider life and death and rebirth a circle. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
So, like, left side would be birth, and then the life goes up around the circle, and then you get down to the bottom of the circle, and then you end up at death, and then you come back over to the left side, which is birth again.
Right. You decay, you then feed life to grow again, and then back, and the circle repeats. She's the death and decaying bit.
Right. And without her, you wouldn't get rebirth. So she's a necessary piece. Even though it seems dark, it's still just a natural, necessary piece of the cycle of life.
Yeah. She's the fertilizer of the Daedric princes.
She's the fertilizer. Right. And she's scary because we can't imagine what death is actually like. We can't imagine nothingness. We can't imagine not being able to think or do or act. The idea of non-existence is a very difficult thing to conceive of as a mortal being. So she's kind of that spooky, dark side of everything. So it goes on. It says, she is seen as the sovereign of the infinite world of spirit, one of the two worlds of existence. And again, this is just the Reachman's understanding of the world, but like so many of these other specific groups do, they kind of shine a little bit of light into the nature of the Daedric Prince in a way that some of the other pantheons don't. So even if this doesn't actually represent all of what reality is actually like, it might show us some insight into who she is. It then says, the Reachfolk creation story speaks of Lorc, so Lorcan, having an epiphany when he visited the darkness. That which is perceived as nothingness is ripe for possibility. It makes sense. Lorcan was the one who wanted to create something where there was nothing in order for them to have creation, right? And so Lorc approached Namira and convinced her to grant him a place in the infinite void to create a realm for wayward spirits. But it was not without a cost. Lorc sacrificed himself to create a harsh realm, one that is unforgiving and intended to teach through suffering. This is all an analogy for the creation of Nirn, for the creation of Mundus and Nirn and Tamriel, all the things that exist within Mundus, and a place for the wayward spirits. That would be mortals, right?
Yep.
And this idea that like the reason why the world is so terrible and hard is because it's intended. It's to teach through suffering. Then it goes into where Hircine plugs into this. Hircine took the mantle of Lorc's creation, becoming the sovereign of the second world, the realm of flesh. Hircine and Namira's roles complement each other. While Reachfolk dwell in the world of the living, Hircine is a guide that helps them navigate Nirn's hardships. And this, of course, ties very specifically into the Reachman's relationship with Hircine. Of course, not everybody thinks of Hircine this way. Upon death, Namira acts as a psychopomp. So, for example, the person who goes across the river and takes the dead souls to the beyond, that kind of thing. For Reachman souls that gives and takes lives until their spirits are enlightened. Thus, Namira is seen as the avatar of primal dualisms, such as beginnings and ends, which stem from her world of spirit. At the end of all days, and that's in quotes, like the end of days, when everything ends, Her scene will fight alongside the Reachmen, and Lork's dark heart will beat again. Reawakened by feeding on the deaths of mortals, and its darkness will spread from its depths to consume everything, sparing only Namira's faithful. So this idea that like Namira has to play a part with the whole cycle of time, the way things move through reality with the spirits in order to bring back the beating heart of Lorkhan in order to end the world, is again very Reachman, but might have some truth to it if Namira is some sort of pre-existing spirit that Lorkhan was connecting with in order to create Mundus. What do you think, Lotus? This is some heavy stuff.
It is. And it's interesting because when you think about what we had mentioned with the cycle of life, which, other than there being a literal cycle to life in reality, in game, a lot of things are very on a path. It's just like, yep, you've got this loop that you go in type of thing. Mm-hmm. And kind of like we had mentioned, you can't progress to the next phase of it if you never leave the previous phase of it. And she's almost like this weird, for lack of a better term, which is kind of, it's something that I've just always thought was kind of neat. If you go to the UESP specifically, the first image on the page you will see is Namira, the Mistress of Decay statue that is in Elder Scrolls Online type of thing. And that image I just find very interesting. I don't know if it's designed to specifically be like that, knowing how particular they kind of can be with this series. I think it might be based on something like that. But she essentially comes across as like a ferryman, like across, like bringing the next phase coming through. And that picture, which actually, if you're watching the live feed, you brought up on screen, which is very helpful. Yeah. It really makes me think of like when you, again, it's all artistic interpretation, but you get that, the ferryman with the river Styx in mythology. Mm-hmm. I get that feel very, very much when it comes to this aspect of Namira, because it's like, it's Namira bringing people to the next phase. Now, granted, maybe they don't want to go to the next phase. That's not how this works. Like, so her faithful basically are on board with it. Whereas other, I guess if you're opposed to Namira, for lack of a better word, you would sort of be fighting this change type of thing, which we've mentioned that. Have we screwed stuff up at the end of the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim? We don't know yet if maybe we did.
Well, and here's the other thing. Here's the other thing is that there are many different ways that souls can, I guess, there are many different places souls can go when they die, or many different paths they can take. In this case, and with many Daedric princes, the souls don't make it back to Aetherius.
Yes, so that's very true. So if you're in her good graces, so to speak, it seems like you're almost getting your, hey, okay, I got a better chance of actually like progressing on, as opposed to just kind of being lost in the shuffle of things, so to speak. Right.
So, we talked about Molag Bal before, and the idea that like the spirits that end up in Molag Bal's realm turn into things like, terrible things like bone golems,
sometimes abominations
and things like that,
like whatever.
Right. Yeah. It's like he can't. It's like they all have their own nets, right? And so Molag Bal casts his net, catches some souls, and then decides to torment them forever because that makes him happy. Yeah. Right. Namira casts her net, catches souls, but maybe her thing is that she's taking them into the next Kelpa. She's actually removing souls from this Kelpa. She is the pathway and the cross platform from one cycle to the next.
Right. And it seems like, at least from, because another, we're kind of referring to the Reachmen, but I'll actually also want to bring up her relation to Khajiit, which I find really, really awesome.
Yeah, there's some similarities in her role. There are some
similarities, and I think what we're going to relate to is something called Dramothra, which actually we should probably do like a episode on Dramothra, maybe like dive into it.
That was one of those big monsters that Godzilla fought, right?
Yeah.
Dramothra.
Yeah, is that what I was going to say? Is that like dumb Mothra? Duh, Mothra.
Duh, Mothra.
So like the Dramothra are another situation where it's just like the darkness of life to kind of like cause this decay, destruction to move on to the next phase is something that like, again, it's shown very much with the Reachmen and the Khajiit specifically, but it's like, is it for a greater purpose other than just causing like there's more of a focus, whereas you had just mentioned Molag Bal. Okay, I like dominating, I like being superior, blah blah blah. Is there more to this one than just the decay? Like, is it designed to be decay in order to move things along and start over again? Because there was a situation with Mehrunes Dagon as well, where it's not just destruction, it's destruction causes rebirth. Like it's another parallel to that idea where one thing causes the next one. So there kind of is more to Namira than just gross stuff.
Right. And I think the whole destruction thing is a cool thing to point out too, because the decay, her sense of the darkness and decay and those things doesn't lead to destruction for the sake of destruction. It leads to rebirth. It leads to fertilizing the next thing. Also, this idea of the connection to darkness and the void. A dark room is not a place where things are destroyed. The void is not a place where things go to be obliterated. It is actually a place. It's just empty, or it's without light. It is a place that is ripe for holding something.
Right. And without kind of jumping too much ahead, one of the things that I just find interesting is her realm is referred to as the Scuttling Void, which going along with this idea of, decay, stuff like that, and death, the best way I've always thought of it with Namira is her realm strikes me as a compost pile, like a legitimate pile of compost. Here is things that are deceased, food scraps, whatever. I mean, it's more than food scraps when you're dealing with like actual everything from a god's perspective. But I mean, from a Daedric Prince's perspective, people are probably the equivalent of food scraps. Like it's really not that big of a deal. So like that stuff is all dumped off into a pile to kind of just let all the little critters break it down. And then as a side effect, you get, I was joking earlier, but I mean, it was joking, but serious. Like you turn that waste becomes fertilizer, which you use to fertilize crops, stuff like that, which causes life to start over again. That's her whole gimmick, so to speak, is kind of like legitimately a compost pile.
A compost pile of the universe.
Yeah.
We recently bought a compost pile and a bunch of worms. My wife's been she put it back in our garden in the back, and we've now got like over 1,000 worms in this this little box that's like stuck in another thing with a bunch of soil and holes in the box, so the worms have places to go. Like. So speaking of compost piles, maybe I should call it our Scuttling Void. This is our
very own Namira.
This is our Namira, our Namira worship. Maybe I should put pictures of Namira up around it, and then we call it the Scuttling Void. Yeah,
what you got to do is 3D print that statue and just stick it right in the middle.
right on top of the lid of the box, and then when it like stays there on the lid. Yeah.
Could you bring out the table scraps to the Namira?
Take to the Namira. Namira's hungry for more scraps. Feed her. All right. Well, I think we've covered that concept. I think that concept is very interesting and important. But I think we've pretty much hit on that. What we do need to cover now is the artifact section. But before we do that, why don't we go thank our patrons, and we'll be back. We'll come, and included in that, and I'm just going to hint at this right here, is now since the UESP has been updated since the last time I did this episode on Namira, is the Dark Heart. The Dark Heart of Skyrim is in there. We'll talk about that a little bit. I don't know. We can get on we did a whole episode about it, so we don't need to go too long.
Real deep with the void.
Right. So we'll kind of brush over that and talk about some of the other things. Don't go anywhere.
This is Miss Morak. Dragonborn, and you are educating yourself to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast.
All right, here we are in the middle of the show. This is where we get to thank our patrons, including, and I don't know if we called out Agent Celery last time. I think we might have, but Agent Celery, you're the most recent patron. Thank you so much for signing up on Patreon. And all 102 of our patrons, thank you so much for your support, including our Daedric princes, Mr. Gummy Boy, Kira, Noodle Al Dente, and Riverwood Chicken. Thank you to all of you guys and everybody who helps support the show. You help me do this as a full-time thing, and I can't tell you how much that I appreciate that. So thank you for your support. If you are interested in helping to support the show, getting whatever you want out of the Patreon, there's lots of different tiers, ad-free episodes, stickers, t-shirts, all that kind of stuff. Then go to patreon.com/Elder Scrolls Lorecast and check out all the different tiers. And we're getting close to, remember when we launched the t-shirts for the patrons last year, Lotus? Mm-hmm. I think that was in September, which means that I will be designing some new shirts to put up on the Patreon for the second year of people who subscribe at tier 4 or higher. And those same designs show up as stickers for tier 3. So if you are interested in getting in on that, it's coming up. Also, and I'm just gonna put this out there for right now, because Patreon doesn't have an easy way to extend the items out a second year. What you have to do is you have to close out 1 year and launch a second year. But what that means is if you are a new patron today, like before the first year cycle ends in September, and you stick around for an entire year, you'll actually get t-shirts from the first year and the second year because you got in on it before the end of the first year. So you get double shirts.
That happens with the UESP as well.
Yeah.
If you get in on the end of their previous cycle, you technically qualify for those, and then it just rolls into the following one just by the way that numbers and calendars work.
Yeah. The new T-Rex is saying she had to change the address. Don't worry, it should update as long as you updated your address with your account. It should be fine. But yeah, that's the thing, is that like if you sign up within the next few months before the first year ends, you'll actually get double shirts. So that's a killer deal right there. I wouldn't miss out on that if I were you, because man, double shirts. Anyway, let's move on to the reviews. Agent Celery left us a review as well on Apple Podcasts. It says, essential for Elder Scrolls fans. 5 stars. I began playing Daggerfall with my parents when I was 11 years old. How freaking amazing is that? And it is amazing to hear other people who have the same love of Elder Scrolls that I do. My dad is now 72 years old, and we still bond over these games. I look forward to the weekly episodes with Tom and Lotus, digging into the lore and getting me through my commute. Give this a listen if you are an Elder Scrolls fan. Lotus, did you play Daggerfall with your parents? Because I didn't.
So I didn't, and that predates me to the series.
Yeah.
As I jumped on with Morrowind, so that's like Loctavian levels of adoption. Same thing with that is a long time fan.
I remember seeing the Daggerfall boxes on the shelves of like the video game stores. Because I was, obviously alive at the time, and I'm a little bit older than this person is, but like I didn't pick it up. It wasn't one of the games that I bought because I only bought so many games because I was like a teenager. But man, that's awesome. That is awesome. Thank you so much, Agent Celery. We really appreciate the support.
Greatly appreciate the kind words.
Yeah, the ratings and reviews are very helpful. If you leave those on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any other platform that allows you to do it, we really do appreciate it. All right, let's move on with the rest of the show.
You're listening to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast, dear child of cities. That is why the Night Mother loves you.
Good old Wes. Thanks again to Wes for dropping those little voice bits in for us. All right. Which one do you want to cover? You're the artificer? Oh God.
Artificer. I like that. We'll go with artificer.
Words is hard.
So
words is hard. All right, you're the artificer. Which one are we covering first?
All right, so the first one I want to actually kick off with is probably the one that most people will know because it's from Elder Scrolls Skyrim, which is still the most popular of all of the games in the series.
Oh, which, by the way, can I jump in real quick? Yeah. We've been trying out Skyrim Together Reborn. We've been playing it on stream.
Yes, I'll be joining hopefully soon.
Yes, it's been a lot of fun. I put up a video on the Robots Radio YouTube page about what you need to know if you're getting in for the first time and all the things that we figure out works and doesn't work. So go check that out if you want. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so we'll be starting with the Ring of Namira, which is obviously Namira's ring. And
yes, it is.
Yes.
That's the name.
Game. Yeah, I was going to say, thus the name.
Kind of on the nose.
So the ring has been known to, at times, reflect damage back onto the attacker, while at other times being able to increase a person's stamina and restore their health to the wearer. Now, the key to this, and the game mechanic to this, is it allows you to become a cannibal.
This is something that Bethesda loves to do with their games, is this idea of adding in a way that you can eat other people's corpses.
Yes, in a nice, squishy, tearing things apart kind of way, because the animation is hilarious. But yeah, so we have this ring, which when you wear it in game, you're given another option when you slay an enemy where you can loot their bodies, you can use the ridiculous Havoc engine to swing them around like I tend to like to do, or you get this new option to feed, in which you basically, it's very similar to the way it works in Fallout for anybody who plays Fallout. You basically get on your knees and dive bomb the corpse and just start mashing it into your face, and it gives you your resources back, which is really awesome.
Right. You don't like pick them up and like take a knife out and just cut off, a piece of lean meat, off the abdomen,
it's like
or something.
Eating ramen with your fists.
It's just like I haven't eaten in weeks. Wow, 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 wow.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's awesome. So I actually love this artifact because when you play on higher difficulties, it is a great get out of jail free card when you burn through all your food or potions or whatever.
Oh yeah, because there's no limit to the corpses that you'll come across.
No, and generally, if you finished a fight and you're kind of chilling around like waiting, have yourself a snack. It's great. So I mean, that's just that's just efficiency.
Joey in chat says my grandma caught me eating people on Fallout and took my Xbox away.
Amazing.
That's great.
So the other that totally threw me off. The other thing that's super useful, I don't personally role play myself in game, but I know a lot of people enjoy that stuff. If you are a Bosmer and follower of the Green Pack, it's also efficiency, because you're cleaning up the battlefield.
I mean, you're doing what you're supposed to do.
Exactly. Yeah. Double win.
All right. So that's the Ring of Namira.
Yeah. That's the Ring of
enemies.
Namira.
Right.
You can find that quest in Markarth, and I definitely suggest you do so.
So on a similar note, I don't know if most of you guys listen to the Skyrim with my mom episodes. I see the download numbers. Most of you guys listen. If you haven't been listening to those, more recently we've been going into some of the dungeons and, of course, fighting the Draugr, and I've been using a lot of magic, so I'm roasting them alive, or undead alive, with fire. And so a few times now I've asked my mom, what do you think that smells like?
Gross.
So I was like, does it smell like food, like we're cooking them, or does it smell like burnt hair and it's just gross? And she's like, probably burnt hair. And I'm like,
yeah, it's almost certainly burnt hair.
Probably. It's not like we're, on a barbecue and we're like, we get done with this and we're like, delicious.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, next item.
So the next item that I actually think we should tackle is the Staff of the Everscamp, which the Staff of the Everscamp is obviously another Daedric artifact. And it's adorned with metallic scamps on the tip of it. And it's inscribed with Daedric lettering, spelling out the word nonsense.
Yes.
This is kind of interesting because the Staff of Everscamp also seems to have very strong potential ties to, because a lot of these have crossover between Daedric princes. It also has a very Sheogorath feel to it.
Yeah, especially the fact that it's got scamps on it. And
right.
This is nonsense. Yeah.
But it's a recurring artifact that's often referred to or often associated with Sheogorath, like I just mentioned, though there is evidence to suggest that Namira has a connection to it as well, which is why it's listed here. The staff was created in Dark Fathom Cave's Shrine, which is located in Cyrodiil's Blackwoods. Its purpose is to be a hindrance to those being unfortunate enough to wield it. So basically, it's a punishment to get this Daedric artifact, which again sounds more Sheogorath-y, but it summons Everscamps, which, like the name suggests, are just scamps whose presence
they don't go away. You don't get rid of them.
You got scamps now. Congratulations!
You've been infected with scamps.
Yep.
Time to go to the doctor.
If you kill them, they immediately rematerialize. So that's great. To anybody who watched my playthrough of Elder Scrolls Legend Battlespire, there was a scamp that, well, there were a lot of scamps. The scamps talk in that game, as everything does, and as well as the bizarre antics of that game. For whatever sadistic reason, the game creators made this scamp with the same thing, except it's just basically the scamp that follows you around. It makes lewd gestures at you, and it has, when I looked up in the code after I beat the game, it has 10,000 hit points. To give you a gauge, a Daedric Lord in that game has like 700.
So it was effectively an Everscamp.
Yes. Yeah. So that's why we officially named him on stream Everscamp McLustthirst.
McLustthirst.
So,
oh man, that's my new persona. That's my new disco 70s.
That is absolutely
Playboy
canon.
Persona.
But as a side effect to the idea, which is when we named him on stream, was I slayed the scamp, punching it for 10,000 damage over the course of a comical amount of time while just walking around trying to discover. I just kept wailing on it.
And eventually, kept punching it as you walk around.
And eventually it died. And
You're
I
like,
was
come
horrified.
here. All right, come here.
Oh my God, I just thought it was programmed to be invincible.
Wow.
2 levels later, he respawned with 10,000 hit points all over again.
So he was not only...
I'm like, it just, yeah.
He was a beefy boy, but he was undefeatable. He was
so that's so I assume that the staff of Everscamp is really, that was honestly, it's this Daedric artifact that came up with the jokey name that I gave to that scamp of Everscamp McLustthirst. It was actually based on the fact that this is a Daedric artifact that essentially does what that game goofily had as part of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so funny. All right. Well, we've got another one definitely named after Namira. Because
so there's the Hand of Namira, which again,
this one ties into ESO. This one's part of like a ESO quest line thing.
It does, and it's pretty straightforward, much like the Ring of Namira, where it's less a shared artifact and really just Namira's, because it's actually the prince's rotting hand.
Right, like this might actually be Namira's hand, or at least one of my thoughts is sometimes the Daedric princes like manifest themselves in like a body form. So obviously they don't actually have hands that are physically part of who they are unless they manifest themselves.
Sure.
But it would have been one of Namira's manifested hands.
Right. So it's a literal hand. This is not metaphorical. It is an actual chunk of Namira in theory, and it corrupts everything in the general vicinity, which is pretty straightforward. The Dremora who serve Namira are terrified of the relic, which is interesting because Dremora are not prone to being afraid of things. So that's a little weird because its energies can actually be turned against them to destroy their physical form, which is, as we've talked about at different points, both here and on the other show that I do, Tales of Tamriel, where destroying the physical form of Daedra is really, really unpleasant. They may be immortal and reform, but it's basically this horrific agony until they are reformed. So it's still not a thing that they go out of their way to do. And having this hand just be able to do that is probably something that actually would strike some degree of fear into them.
I mean, if anything, it's just bothersome because they have to just be reborn and then grow back up into their
right.
It takes them a little while to get back into their regular form again and all of that.
Exactly. And basically under the hand's influence, since everything is just corrupted, for lack of a better way of putting it, stuff goes crazy, like legitimately, like it will just start acting incredibly irrationally. You could have like farm animals attacking villagers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So that's part of the deep disturbance quest line in ESO.
Yep.
And I like T-Rex is pointing out in chat. T-Rex says, oh, wait, I don't remember doing this. I don't have an actual memory of doing this either. I have to wonder if somehow I missed this in game.
I
know you've done everything.
I don't remember this off the top of my head either.
I think it was just kind of a minor little quest. I think it was from
probably a side quest. It's just there's so many literal thousands of quests in ESO.
It's true. There's a lot.
I don't remember all of them.
There's a lot. This is in Shadowfen, so this might have just been a little side quest in the Shadowfen zone. Okay. Yeah, interesting. All right. Well, last we have to talk about is the Void, the Dark Heart, and Void connection, and all of that.
This is kind of new and can help expand a little bit of the Void discussion that we were dabbling in before. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you want to kick off on this one? Because I know you love the Void bits.
I love darkness. Hello, darkness. Here, I'm just going to read what it says here because that'll kick off the discussion. The Dark Heart, also known as the Frightful Heart, is an artifact associated with Namira through some of the cultural interpretations of Lorcan, specifically Lorc and Lorcage. This ties directly to what we were talking about with like the Reachmen and the Khajiit interpretations of Namira. So the fact that this is a physical thing that shows up in the world gives some credence to maybe some of those perspectives. Physically appearing as a sphere of darkness surrounded by a radiant aquamarine corona, it is a piece of primal void trapped on Nirn that warps existence around it. According to ancient Khajiit, Namira became a shadowy imitation of Lorcan's heart, while Reach belief holds that the darkness left his heart after his sacrifice for the creation of the realm of flesh. Regardless, Lorcan's real heart was flung towards what is now Vardenfell and created Red Mountain, while the dark heart found its way into the depths of Black Reach and remains under the influence of Namira. So there's still some mystery around this. Like, what is the dark heart compared to the real heart? Is it a representation of the void? Is it directly connected to Lorcan and was a piece of Lorcan that ended up landing here just like his heart landed somewhere else? So there's still there's some metaphor around this still, potentially. The Dark Heart offers a pathway into the void, and its power is increased by consuming souls, banishing them to that place between worlds. Those tied to the heart describe hearing intrusive whispers and can feel its pulsing and throbbing, which grows stronger as the heart becomes more powerful. Additionally, the power of the Dark Heart can be drawn from at the risk of being consumed by it. Those trapped in the Dark Heart's power and are overwhelmed undergo horrifying physical side effects. In the case of the Night Hollow clan, their vampiric appearance was overwritten with Namira's bile, which grayed out their skin and produced a black ichor within their eyes. Lady Belaine, the clan's matriarch, developed void pathosis. Imagine getting that diagnosis from your
void pathosis.
Yeah. Why do I feel so bad? And why are my eyes all inky black? Sorry, you got void pathosis. Altering her vampire lord form with an ink-like texture, which has the potential to hollow a mortal's shell out and leave behind nothing but a husk. What's amazing about this is that it overwrites what seems to be the power of another Daedric lord, vampirism. So if it's Namira somehow tapping into the void or some sort of connection, it seems like they're actually reaching back into something even more, again, potent and primordial than maybe the Daedric princes themselves. So I don't know if we need to go into too much more detail about that right now, because we did kind of talk about this before. It also just leaves a lot of question marks, because as far as when I was left, as we talked about in the previous episode when we talked about the void, after you finish that quest line, I'm still left with a lot of questions. The void, a place between realms. How is Namira connected to this? Is it actually a piece of Lorcan? all of that stuff seems very, very mysterious. But what we do know is that it is actually a real thing, and it is powerful enough to corrupt and overwrite things that the other Daedric princes have done. So there is that. Pretty crazy stuff.
Yes, the whole void thing definitely gets very strange, and it's I really actually kind of don't want to go too much into it, because honestly, it's partly related to this, but I had mentioned the Khajiit thing. Mm-hmm. The only thing I should kind of say, because I actually would like to do an episode after we finish this, we'll have to remember to get back to it, kind of the way we did with the void, and we just touched on the void here type of thing.
Yeah.
I would really like to do the Dramothra as a thing, but it's a very similar idea. If even if you just look at it cosmetically, that they're basically these shadow versions of Khajiit type of thing. And it's actually one of, I'm not too big into the high fantasy personally, but some of these Joey Chaos actually from Lost in Nern mentioned in chat that there's a dye. There's also a skin for beating the Vadashan Hollows arena. It's a solo arena in Elder Scrolls Online, and you get Void Pitch, which is like this. Just you literally are almost so like pitch black. You're like devoid of color, and you just have these like weird like poles of color, kind of like that green aura that they mention along parts of you, which is super creepy. And in a similar way, not exactly the same, but just cosmetically, Dramothra have like this like devoid of color, and then there's just these like lightning bolt style light that kind of cracks through. It's like this overarching theme of like pure darkness with little slivers of color going through. It's really neat, just cosmetically. I think some of the color patterns related to things tied into Namira.
Yeah. It actually is kind of similar to the way the Dark Heart looks.
It is
the idea of it being like this,
the green with blue, and
right, like this black hole, but then with like the light kind of poking through it, kind of thing.
Right, and that's just it. So it's like we can dive deep into that, but again, it's the TLDR of Dramothra. This is really condensed. Just the idea of corruption to the spirits around there. You'll get the idea of the bent dance is what it's referred to. But the thing is, like, I believe it's Y'ffre, if I'm not wrong. Oh, actually, yes. So the Great Darkness that comes along after Lorkhan's death, or Lorcage, because it's
Lorcage, because it's Khajiit,
because it's Khajiit. So I'll try to. It's a corruption of Y'ffre as well. Like we'll get nice and deep into this later on. But again, it's a very similar idea of corruption of things to turn them to Namira to kind of further this. And it's neat that their unique style also is very, very intertwined with Namira. Yeah. All of this stuff is very, very cool and also very mysterious. So whereas so much of the lore in the Elder Scrolls leaves a certain amount of like, well, what do you think? We don't really know for sure. Unreliable narrator. Right. I feel exactly. I feel like once you look enough into the darkness of Namira, you just end up going, I don't know. Yeah. It's like, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. I don't really know. It's weird, but I feel like I don't know if this analogy will quite work as well as it does in my head, but it's one of those things where when you stare into, like, if you're in a dark room for like a long, long time and your eyes adjust, so your pupils get wider to obviously allow more light in to see what's going on. And then your transition to light of some type it's almost like jarring to you to have to go back into that. I feel like that's a perpetual state of being for people the deeper they get with Namira. Like it's the idea of like, okay, I keep seeing more of this darkness, so it keeps sucking you in, and it would almost be physically painful to go back into the light if you get too deep into Namira's realm, sphere, whatever you want to call it.
Right. You fall too far into the darkness. It's hard to come back out.
It's hard to pull yourself back out.
Yeah. Well, I think it's time to wrap up the episode with there's not a whole lot of fun little notes about Namira, because Namira is so mysterious. It doesn't really show up too much in the series directly. But we do have a voice actor. And this one's interesting. This one's a little bit different than some of the others. The actress Mozan Marno, I don't know if I pronounced the name right. Mozan Marno started back with the first credit on IMDb is 2006 in The Unit. The TV show was Protocol Chief in The Unit, and has acted in many different series. Medium, Bones, more recently The Blacklist, Samar Novabi in The Blacklist, Pan and Tommy, the miniseries that came out, she was Gale. A few other notable places. Did some voice over stuff for a few different kinds of animated things, like Wonder Woman Bloodlines was Dr. Cyber. But then specifically, you've got Skyrim back in 2011 was the voice of Namira and Mirabelle Irvine. Some other notable TV series, The Mentalist, Nikki Weymouth, and House of Cards. She was Ayla Sayed. I don't know how to say. I don't know how to say words. Oh no. Yeah, words is hard. But yeah, so this is primarily a TV actor who they got to do a voice in a video game, and I don't know if there's any. I'm looking through the series for like. There's one other game that I saw in here. Nope, maybe not. Nope, those are shorts. Those are TV video game. Nope, that's Elder Scrolls. Oh, nope. 1979 Revolution Black Friday. That classic from 2016.
Yes, the one that everyone played.
We all remember that one.
That gem.
But
I have no idea what that is.
I don't know either. But yeah, this is very normally the voice actors are known for lots of other games and often animation stuff, but this was
it is kind of a unique situation that Namira got her voice actor.
Yeah. And no ESO credits. I haven't found any ESO credits. I don't know if Namira talks directly in
I was going to say, I'm trying to think of a situation. You deal with Namira, but I'm not sure Namira ever speaks to you yet.
Yeah, I don't think ESO. We get a voice. I don't think so.
The only other thing that I would like to make reference to, because it's too long to read, it's not copiously long, but it's too long to read on this episode. When I feel like there's a piece of literature from the series that ties in, Namira has a fantastic one. And the book is called The Beggar Prince, which I would suggest looking up The Beggar Prince on, wherever. Find it in game, look it up on the UESP, or go to Skyrim Book Club and have an audio version of it read to you. Any of those, any of those are great. But The Beggar Prince is an awesome story about Weedle. And the interesting thing about the story, which again, I suggest reading it in some form or another, as opposed to us reciting the entire thing to you. I love that this story even gives a background to the beggars in the games, like throughout the series, because one thing that you will often get is if you're looking for information, oftentimes you can give money to the poor, and as a side effect, they'll give you rumors, they'll tip you off on quests. You'll actually get direction from these beggars in the various cities in the different games of Elder Scrolls, which is something that I've always thought was cool, and I did not originally know that it had a actual lore tie-in to why that why this is a part of the game. So yeah, it's just definitely check out the Beggar Prince. And yes, Weedle is actually the Pokemon, apparently.
Yeah, same name.
Yeah, same name.
In summary, real quick, Weedle basically does what Namira asks and is rewarded with a disease, which
he gets the
of his
power
choice
of being diseased,
right? You get to have
ignored.
Yeah, the affliction of whatever disease you want, as long as it has visible symptoms. Here you go. Keep on begging is basically the whole premise.
Yeah, and the idea of just being overlooked as completely insignificant, which has its benefits.
Right. And in fact, is so insignificant that even in the story, we don't know if it was a man or a woman. Like the beginning of the story talks about like there was someone named Weedle. That's all we know. Like we don't know very much more about them other than they were also the 13th child of a king in Valenwood.
Super
13th child, right? Like, yeah, you're a child of a king, but like you're on the very bottom of the list, right? So like really not a whole lot going for him. I mean, I guess more than just the average person, but
yeah, but still, yeah, the power of disease, the power of pity, those are some interesting gifts to be given, but that's how these are the three. I was looking for them exactly. It's Weedle is given the power of disease, the power of pity, and the power of disregard. Now, how is that for a selling point?
Get ignored. Yep, you get some pity and then ignored. So. Well, that's Namira for you. And I think that wraps up this week's episode. We'll be back next week with another Daedric Prince. I don't know that we're doing a little side project thing for QuakeCon. So
yes,
that's the thing that we're going to be doing in the works. I don't think we'll be streaming it live, but you'll be able to see that next month during QuakeCon. So if you want to check out one of our fun game show things, we're going to be doing that. And we'll have more info about that. Lotus, you got anything else you want to share? Tales of Tamriel?
No, so I've just been enjoying the new expansion and Tales of Tamriel. We are trying to decide how to address all of the chaos that's currently going on in the Elder Scrolls Online community with the proposed update. Because there's a lot of spicy changes coming, Yeah. Whether you agree or disagree is kind of irrelevant to this, but
lots of debate.
Yes,
I would chime in real quick and just say constructive criticism, wonderful.
Absolutely.
Acting like a man baby, not so good. Correct. Acting like a terrible villain and threatening people, right out.
Yeah.
Don't do that. It's a video game and these are human beings.
Correct.
So that's my take on the whole thing.
Yes, and that has been a take that I would like to see more people adopt, because I have my own thoughts, which we will be going into on the show. And there are definitely some concerns, but yeah, in general, it's been very spicy with the upcoming patch on the horizon, which, that aside, I'm very excited for the new dungeons that are also coming. And in the meantime, I've just been really enjoying playing High Isle. It does seem like, I believe I had mentioned it on this show, where I had run into quite a few technical difficulties. Despite how much I enjoyed High Isle, I was running into all sorts of technical problems. And I was like, I love this so much. Why is this fighting me tooth and nail?
Yeah,
and
you mentioned that last time. That was like such a bummer to try and play.
Patch, when it lands, helps.
Yeah.
For me personally, it's helped quite a bit. It's not perfect, but that's fine. It's a functioning online game. I mean, nothing's ever perfect.
It's a step in the right direction. Everything's just another patch.
A lot of issues. So hopefully it continues in that direction, because it's super, super fun. And I love the new expansion.
Yeah. Awesome. I've been, like I mentioned during the, or just after the mid-break or during the mid, I don't remember when it was. We've been doing a whole long show. I've been playing Skyrim Together Reborn. It's been a lot of fun. Having a lot of fun with that. Also, tried out some Elden Ring co-op with a randomizer last night. Dude, have you played Elden Ring, Lotus?
Funny you say that. I was just going to be installing it.
Nice. Well, you're playing on PlayStation, so you won't be able to join us. But what we did was we, on PC, there's a co-op mod that allows you not just to summon people when you get to like certain places where you can summon a friend. You just can all play in the world together, like an open world game.
Just run around co-op.
You just run around co-op.
Neat.
And on top of that, I installed a randomizer and then gave other people, like Rob the Princess played with me last night, Sam N7 from the Mass Effect Lorecast. The three of us played together, and they have the same randomizer seed as I do, which means that all the items and all the enemies in the game are just mixed up. So it's like, you're like, oh, there's regular like zombies and little soldier guys here. Nope. Giant Cthulhu monster in the middle of where I wouldn't expect it. So it was a lot of fun. So we've been streaming that stuff, and this is all part of me doing more stuff with mods and doing, and it's kind of a big announcement. We're doing a show. Sam and I are doing a show that we are calling Mod Masters on the Robots Radio YouTube channel, where we talk about different mods and all the different things that you can do with all of these games that we love. So go check that out, especially if you're into Skyrim. We'll have some Skyrim stuff. We're testing out which mods work with Skyrim together and which ones don't. Got a lot of cool stuff coming for that. So if you aren't already following over there, go do that. If you're not following on the Elder Scrolls Lorecast YouTube, go follow there as well, where you can see our beautiful faces in each of these episodes. And I think that's about it for this week. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you next time. Stay safe out there.
See you later.
Thanks for joining us. We'd love to hear from you. You can reach me on Twitter at robots_radio or Lotus of Doom at Lotus of Doom. Also, you can join us on the Robots Radio Discord channel. You can easily just search Robots Radio Discord on Google or check the description underneath the podcast. Also, this podcast is recorded live every week on Thursday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on the Robots Radio channels on Twitch, YouTube, and on Facebook. So just search Robots Radio on any of those platforms. Come join us. We'd love to chat with you while we record the show, or before or after. Either way, just come hang out with us. And if you're looking for more information about my shows and the shows on the Robots Radio Network, go to robotsradio.net for all the information about all the shows on the network, including the Robots Radio Rocket Club, where I help both new and existing podcasters to grow their shows, build their audiences, and create the best podcasts they possibly can. All of that at robotsradio.net. We'll see you next time.